Hello, welcome to the Bigger True Show. I'm Scott McMahon, and this should be a good show. I was going to go in a completely different direction about a half hour ago, and I had something I'd been kind of working on today, and that's what I was going to do. And then I saw that Dan Bongino called out. Really, he directly called out Jeff in the Matrix with the MG show and Shady. Uh, it was it was pretty awesome. So we're gonna go into that, and I'm gonna talk about what I think might be what I suspect might be going on there with with Dan Bongino, and then we're gonna go into uh, where Flynn is apparently trying to stoke the flames of World War III and replace Biden with Kamala. And some crazy. So we're going to look at that and what he might be, or at least what it appears that he's trying to do, and we'll see where we go from there. So let's get right into Dan Bongino. I used to listen to Dan Bongino during the um Crossfire Hurricane thing. He was definitely getting some inside information in that, um and his reporting on that, at least at the time, it really appeared to be accurate. Now, I've read he in today's show, much of the show was focused on his own endorsement of Kash Patel for FBI, and it was 100%. He's just all in. He wants Cash to be the FBI director. Dan Bongino does. And um, I read the reason, really, the main reason why I have questions about Cash Patel. I mean, aside from he's obviously very close to Flynn, and there's so many different uh, entities, organizations, even countries, uh, intelligence organizations that all run influence ops. And much of it works the same kind of way. Excuse me, still getting over this cough. And where they really try to they form a friendship. They really, they try to wine and dine. They try to build this like trusting relationship, and then in key ways they try to influence. And let's see, it says my video is not playing on X, huh? Let me just hop over to X real quick. It looks like it is. So it must be on your end. So try to reset. So anyways, the these influence ops, the way that they tend to run is, that they try to gain influence over a person or a group of people or whatever. And um, so thank you all for joining live. You're welcome to ask questions as we go. Krista says, "Hey Scott, thank you for what you're doing. Why is Eric Trump so close to Flynn and Clay Clark?" And that's a good question. And Jackson Lawmeyer and Clay Clark asked that question in Tulsa, and I think that there's a few different answers, and I'll just get to that real quick, and then we'll keep going. Um, the the there's the adage, keep your friends close and your enemies closer, and that's a really simple way of thinking about it. But I think it's good to think about, well, why would someone want to keep their enemies closer? And and it relates to what I'm talking about here, running an influence op. So maybe Eric and Don Jr. and Alina Habba were just close to Clay Clark and Flynn in order to, try to keep him in, try to hold together during, he was running a presidential campaign. Since Trump won, we haven't seen any indication that Eric and Don Jr. and Alina Habba are close with Flynn. So maybe we will see that. I don't know, but we haven't seen that in the days since the election. But that he was running a campaign. He was trying to go big tent. He was trying to hold his base together. And normally, a candidate shouldn't have to worry about holding his base together. But his base had been so infiltrated, and they were running narratives to try to depress the vote. I mean, a campaign is run on hope, right? I mean, that's really what the primary fuel of a campaign. Of course, Kamala's campaign, and largely the reason why she lost, is because her campaign was run on hate. It was completely dependent on stoking the flames of hatred against Donald Trump and scaring people into voting for her because of fear over the world ending or whatever it is that they believed that was going to happen if Trump became elected. So, um, the yeah, if I am, it says now I'm buffering. I think that's probably on your end. I hope it's not on my end, but if there's a lot of um if there's a lot of that, that's fine. But yeah, I mean, there's and yeah, exactly. Beaver Nation says hate and joy isn't that an oxymoron? Yeah, she was saying that she was running a campaign on joy, but she cackled, but really she was running on hate, right? Everything she said was trying to direct people to thinking about all of these horrible things that they were saying about Trump, most of which weren't true. So, but anyways, back to Flynn. He was deliberately running campaigns that were sucking people of their hope. Hopelessness in the election system. It's all rigged. And the machine fraud psyop. I've talked about that at length. How they were pushing the narrative that the machines steal the elections, and that if you believe that that there's some flip of a switch, that bureaucrats or foreign countries or whatever can flip this switch and they can control the outcome of the election, truly, what's the point in voting? But Trump was saying, no, we can be too big to rig. And the reason why he said that, and he proved it was proven right, is because the fraud was never in the machines. It was in the voter rolls. And so because it's in the voter rolls, there's a limit to how many ballots they can actually stuff. And Trump was able to overcome that. And that's fantastic. So, um, but that's not what the Flynn camp and all of these election integrity grifters who are all in that Flynn orbit and associated with the Reawaken tour and all that, they were all pushing endlessly. It's all rigged. It's all rigged. It's all rigged. Election fraud. They were only talking about election fraud. And 2022 really proved that you can't win an election talking about election fraud. It's just, you can't do it, because for two reasons. One is because they have successfully discredited it among enough people, the whole idea of election fraud, and partly because there have been so many lies, including the whole idea of machine fraud. The machines do have vulnerabilities, but we need greater transparency, and we need some changes in our election laws. But the fraud was never in the machines, and I think most rational people saw that. The media really harped on some stories that were promoted, that were deliberate, that were false, that were promoted after the 2020 election, and promoted by the Flynn Network, included in Sidney Powell's lawsuits, and all of that. That was a big part of the op after the 2020 election, was getting us to look under the wrong rock. Getting us to look under the machine fraud rock instead of under the voter rolls rock, where we might have found the fraud. So partly to ensure Biden's inauguration in 2020, partly to depress the vote in 2022 and 2024. Um, and and as I think we'll see, there's more to it as well. So I want to get back to Dan Bongino. When Dan Bongino was doing his reporting, and that's when I was following him, was back in 17, especially as we were starting to discover what had, or at least we were starting to be told what had happened there. And in Dan Bongino's entire story and telling of that event, he always defended Flynn. And when I read Kash Patel's book, Government Gangsters, and that book is really largely, the majority of the book is about Crossfire Hurricane, and his work, because he helped Devin Nunes to he didn't work for the Trump campaign until the very end. Cash didn't. Um, Devin Nunes brought him on kind of as a research assistant to help him to do the research on that that he was doing on the House. I think he was on the House Oversight Committee. That so he was researching Crossfire Hurricane and these offenses against Trump, and and they were trying to bring that to light what the FBI was doing. So in Government Gangsters, Cash talks quite a bit about Crossfire Hurricane, but he never talks about Crossfire Razor. Crossfire Razor was FBI's code name for Flynn. Flynn brought a an FBI investigation upon himself when he went to Russia. He went to Moscow just 2 months before starting to work on Trump's campaign in December of 2015. And he was paid $45,000 by Russia Today, which is a state-owned newspaper. So he was paid by the Russian government. He sat at the table and had dinner right next to Vladimir Putin. And that really started and initiated an investigation into Flynn, especially once Flynn joined Trump's campaign. That I believe and there's a lot of documents from this time that have not been declassified yet. So, and I'm working on a report about some of the key documents that really need to be declassified, so that will give us a lot clearer picture about what really happened back then. But I believe that Flynn was actually under investigation from the very beginning, as soon as he joined Trump's campaign. And so the FBI's code name for Flynn was Crossfire Razor, and the most of the connections between Trump and Russia, which is what this was all about, came through Flynn. Now there was also, there were others as well. Mifsud was this kind of, he tried to he's the one that got George Papadopoulos involved, and he had a couple cell phones that were taken, but for some reason he was never questioned himself by Durham when he did his investigation. He was able to get those phones. Whatever was on those phones was never released. But even more importantly, where he got those phones was never released. And that's an interesting thing, as I've been talking to people who have been researching this for years. The source of those phones, I think, is very important. And does it tie to Flynn? It might. I don't know. But whoever gave him those phones likely also was the one that was giving Mifsud the instructions to set up Papadopoulos. So that's something that hopefully we will find out. And that goes to my doubt about Kash Patel. In Government Gangsters, he never once mentions Flynn until you get to chapter 12. So he's talking about Russia, Russia, Russia. He's talking about all the ways that Trump was set up, but he doesn't even talk about Flynn at all until you get to chapter 12. And chapter 12 is all about Flynn, and it is a full-throated defense of Flynn, and it's revisionist history. He leaves out. So this is, his historical telling of what happened in 2016 and beyond, and his whole telling, and he's going in a great amount of detail, but he leaves out some really key details. He leaves out that Flynn lied to Pence. He downplays Flynn's lies to the FBI, and he's painting Flynn as being a victim, whereas Flynn really was integral. Without Flynn, if there were no Crossfire Razor, there really would not have been a Crossfire Hurricane. He never talks about Flynn's the investigation into Flynn because of his trip to Moscow. These are really, really important details. And I think that, any rational person that really looks at Flynn's involvement in all of that, and Flynn, he never talks about Flynn accepting $530,000 from the Turkish government while he's working on Trump's campaign to spy on and help kidnap a Turkish cleric who was a Muslim cleric who was legally residing in the United States. And it was a violation of the FARA Act, so he needed to register as a foreign agent. He knew that, and he didn't. And, these are things that really came back and hurt Trump. And, he knew this. He was in intelligence. He was in military intelligence for 33 years. I mean, he understands chain of command. He knows how things are supposed to work, and he wasn't doing that. Um, so there's a lot there, and Cash really, in his book, he covers it all up. He leaves out that Flynn was while he was working on Trump's 2016 campaign, he was also a lobbyist for Pegasus, which is, I think it's ISO, is this Israeli tech company that developed a device that can hack into anyone's cell phone, and it was used by intelligence agencies across the world to hack into lots of people's phones, and um, so, does Flynn have this now? I often wonder, is he using this against me? I don't know. I do think that he's using it against some of my sources. So, um, yeah. So there's just questions. Would if Cash is willing to cover up Flynn's involvement, he's clearly compromised. And so what kind of justice would we really come to if he's in charge of the FBI? I think that what we want in an FBI director is someone who's going to reform the agency because it's completely gone off the rails, who's going to identify the bad actors, that's going to declassify and bring transparency to all of the things that have been done against us for political purposes, and restructure the agency, put in some real rules that can't be bent, remove loopholes, and do some things to really reform the agency, because we need a national policing agency to investigate interstate crime and federal crimes. We need that. I mean, we need rule of law. So I think I really disagree with all of the calls to abolish or destroy the FBI, because um, anytime you do that to an organization, anytime you try to, whether it's a country or an organization, you destroy something and then try to rebuild it, it's just so easy for that rebuilding to be infiltrated too, and for the final outcome to be something completely different from what we're intending it to be. So I think that what we need is reform, but we also need someone who is really an independent thinker, and who really is serving the president and the president alone and no other interests. And I don't think that Kash Patel is that person. I think that he's too deeply compromised. And um and so, I I don't think that Cash is the right choice. Dan Bongino obviously does though. So let's play what Dan Bongino had to say, because I think this is stunning.
Turn it up. Turn it up. This is really important. There are people out there on X right now, the world's most powerful news platform, no question about it. They are anonymous accounts. Anonymous in that you don't know their real names. They have some picture up and then it says like whatever, X-Man or whatever it may be. I'm not even going to say their names, but if you're following on Twitter, you know who they are.
Okay, so he is primarily, I said this is, I posted, I said he's talking about me. And after I posted that, I realized, no, and I listened to it again. He's really talking about in the Matrix, Jeff and Shannon Shady Groove from the MG show. And I was on their show last Friday. This is definitely, in part response to that. And we talked a little bit about Cash, but mostly we were talking about Flynn. But he is definitely talking about the MG show, which is just awesome. I love it. I love it.
I promise you, these are plants. They are either left-wing or deep state plant accounts who are trying to sabotage people like Flynn, people like Patel.
Okay, so he's not providing any evidence whatsoever. He's not even naming names, because he doesn't want anyone to be exposed to the evidence. I love that look that I froze him on there. But he's not providing any evidence for his assertion. He's just saying that these are deep state plants. I promise you, take my word for it. That's what he's wanting you to Dan Bongino is wanting you to trust him on faith. And I can say, I'm where I'm at. I have no animus towards Flynn. I have no animus towards Cash Patel. I have no animus really towards Dan Bongino or anybody. I just came into this. I was a small town reporter trying to figure out why the state party was so divided. And the answer, all the evidence led to Flynn and Patrick Byrne and the America Project and many others being involved in a multi-state operation to infiltrate and ultimately destroy, but based on its fruit, whether that's their intentions or not, it's the clear fruit. And it is pretty clear that it has been deliberate. So this is an effort to infiltrate and destroy state Republican parties. And then as I look at it even further and look at the other things that Flynn has done, he did this to Trump's campaign in 2016. He tried to, these lies and everything, and not getting into becoming the NSA director, taking a call. He took a call from Putin, didn't even tell Trump about it. After Trump was president, Putin called the White House, and it was Flynn's responsibility to connect that call with President Trump, and he didn't do it. So, yeah, there's some real concerns there about Flynn. And then it goes into, I talked earlier about what he did with the election integrity movement. This was a coordinated effort to take over the election integrity movement. And it was pre-planned. They knew that they were going to cheat. They knew that we would be pissed, and they wanted to control the narrative. They wanted to use it against us. And in many different ways, that's exactly what they did. They tried to do that to a large degree, I think, with COVID and the health and freedom movement. Flynn was very much involved in infiltrating the health and freedom movement, and traveling around, and that was kind of the original seeds of the Reawaken tour. The first Reawaken tour in Tulsa at Rima Bible College was, I think it was called Reopen Oklahoma or something like that, or Reopen America or something. And so that's really what they took over that thing. And that the response to COVID, that could have been something, had it been a true grassroots movement, where of independent thinkers who were not compromised and didn't act like a whole bunch of fools, and we just come together just pursuing the evidence and speaking truthfully, that could have brought together it could have created a groundswell that would have resulted in a massive victory in 2020 for Trump. But instead, it was derailed, and it became this kind of clown show. And that's what they do. They act like a bunch of lunatics, and they do a bunch of crazy things, like what Flynn wrote even just yesterday about replacing Biden with Kamala Harris, which is just it's logic defying. But this is the way that they behave. So I'm gonna let Dan go on.
Why do you think they're doing that? I give you a simple test. If you're on Twitter, you know what I'm talking about. Ignore these people. They are lying to you. They are working against you and for the deep state. Here's a simple test.
Okay, so Dan Bongino is 100% lying. And Jeff and Shannon are not anonymous. They do not hide their identity whatsoever. And they have the exact same, this is just like the left. They have the exact same response to me every single time, whether it's in state parties, when I went to Oklahoma and spoke down there, they have the exact same response. It's all lies. That's their first thing. It's all lies. The next thing is, I'm a deep state plant. There's the deep state's behind me. I'm a plant, and I'm funded by the deep state. I so wish I were funded by the deep state. I wouldn't listen to them because I'm just too much of a rebel. But I so wish that they'd give me some funding. That'd be amazing. I could do a lot more with some more funding. But yeah, so here, let's go on to this simple test.
Send them a DM if you can. These anonymous accounts claiming cash. Oh, we don't want cash. We don't want Mike. These are terrible guys. Just send them a simple question. Say, what's your name? I absolutely guarantee you they either don't answer or they make some John Brown. Why won't they tell you their names? Okay,
this is just unbelievably stupid. Ariel, he doesn't hide his name. He did initially, but he's been public with his name. Um, Shannon and Jeff, they've put their names out there. Nobody's hiding their identity. From the very beginning, I put my name out there. Uh, but that's apparently his simple test, and it's failed. So there's he's destroying his own credibility here. It's pretty wild.
My name. I am publicly on my name is my birth name is Daniel John Bongino. That's my name. Look it up. You're listening to the Dan Bongino Show. I'm telling you on my honor, Cash Patel's the guy. Why can't those people do that? There is an enormous deep state effort to stop Cash from getting this job because they are terrified he's going to be the one with the keys to the kingdom. And I don't mean the good kingdom. I mean the kingdom of shit that led to the collusion hoax and Spygate. Please trust me. It is very sophisticated. It is an op.
I appreciate the compliment. They thinks that what we're doing is sophisticated. All we're doing is just following the evidence where it leads. And this is all just if you don't know, if you haven't realized that we're in an information war and that it's impossible to know who to trust. We're in the middle of it. And this is biblically prophesied, that what is right in Paul wrote that in I think it was in 2 Timothy. He said, what is right will be wrong and what is wrong will be right. And we see everything's upside down, right? And we see that it's so obvious from the left, but it's happening on our side too, in all of our news. And the people that we have listened to, whether it's Dan Bongino or Steve Bannon, so many have been so deeply compromised. And so he gave us this test and he failed it himself.
Enough said. I don't want to beat this thing to death. It's an op. I'm absolutely sure of it.
So just trust him. He's absolutely sure it's an op. Oh my. Beaver Nation says all Bongino has to do is listen to them and they will tell you their names. Exactly. Bongino just lost it for me. So it is unfortunate. The bad news is that Bongino is now in charge of the Secret Service. Is he really? Has he been declared is he really? Oh no. Oh. Let me just I'm looking up real quick I'm pulling up on Truth Social to see. Has that been announced? I don't see that. I see Matthew Whitaker is going to be the ambassador to NATO. And I see Linda McMahon, this is from last night, is going to be in charge of the SBA. So, I don't know if that's official yet. I know that I'm sure he wants to be. I'm sure he definitely wants to be. But, and Lauren says, I do have to admit, I haven't dug too deeply into that. There's a lot of messy rumors. Yes, absolutely. And, and I've been subjected to that, or I've fallen prey to that too. So there are so many different rumors flying around. There's just so much information flying around. And so I learned, this is interesting. So this was about 3 months ago. This is right around the time that RFK Jr. This was a week after RFK Jr. endorsed Trump. And I was told that by somebody that I considered to be, something of a friend. I just, he was former military intelligence. So, I keep people like that kind of arm's length, but I'm happy to talk to anybody. And he came to me and, he came to me all friendly like, and that's what they always do. They come all friendly like, and, they try to, they're acting like they're trying to help. Um, and he was telling me that there was a sea change, and this is somebody who had been pretty vocal in opposition to Flynn and Byrne and all them. And he said that after RFK endorsed Trump within the Flynn network, there was a real sea change. They really did not believe before that that Trump was going to win, but after that, they believed that Trump was going to win. And I think that Flynn, in especially in the health and freedom movement, that was one of Flynn's objectives, was to try to get up close to RFK Jr. And Joe Flynn publicly endorsed RFK at one point and for president. And it looked like they were really trying to get in with RFK. And so when that happened, from what I was told, this was not something that they really knew about in advance. And after that happened, it was a shift. What From what I was told, and this guy said he was working directly. He showed me text messages. He was working directly with Patrick Byrne, Tom Renz, and Laura Logan. All of a sudden, and what they were changing their strategy. And he kind of admitted, not directly, but he kind of admitted that they were trying to get Trump to lose, but now they were trying to get him to win because they knew he was going to win. And so, it wasn't just that they were trying to get him to lose, but they were running their ops. And Ivan Raiklin was really clearly, just very obvious, trying to incite an armed rebellion in the event that Trump lost. And so they're shifting gears. They were still going to kind of run that op, trying to incite anger and hatred and hopelessness and fear and all that kind of stuff. But they were also going to try to get friendly with Trump and try to really make a push to help Trump win, hoping that they were going to be able to get some influence within his administration. So, and this is just hearsay. He showed me his text, showing that he was in, and I could, yeah, I could name him, but I just, I don't have his permission. Not that we're friends anymore, but I don't want to name him. Um, but yeah, so they after RFK, that there was a shift, is what I was told, in the within the Fund network, and that they were really trying to help. Then they were trying to help Trump win. I mean, it was a funny way of doing it all the way up until the very end. I mean, just a week before the election, Patrick Byrne went on an X space saying that the election wasn't going to happen on election day. There was going to be an EMP attack. And I covered this when it happened, a few days after it happened. He said that the or maybe China was going to attack on our soil, but in any event, we were going to be without power. And Flynn was saying that this was going to happen. That's what Patrick Byrne said, and I'd heard that from many other sources too, as I've reported in Florida. The Trump clubs there, which are really just run by Flynn, they're data mining ops more than anything else. They have huge mailing lists, and but a director of one of those Trump clubs told a source directly, that they knew about a month and a half before the election, that they knew that there was just not going to be power on election day, and so there was going to be a need for people to hand count ballots. And so they weren't even doing any get out the vote. They weren't doing any. They were not encouraging anyone to work the polls or challenge the polls. They were only teaching people how to hand count ballots. And in Arizona, Shelby Bush was doing the same thing. Instead of doing real get out the vote work, she was traveled around the state teaching people how to hand count ballots, which there's no provision for in state law. And so yeah, that they were not helping. They were not helping. They were not running. Yeah, I mean, the narratives that Trump was running were extremely clear. They were very positive. You never saw those from Flynn, ever. You never saw, let's be too big to rig. Did anybody see Flynn saying that? I never did. Yeah, maybe he did, and I haven't seen every single thing that he's ever said, but I never saw him say, "Let's be too big to rig." Um, you know, th- Trump was saying in towards his final rallies, "Dare to dream big again." And he said at the national convention, he says, "I want you to dare to be optimistic about the future." I have never seen any optimism from Flynn ever. I've never seen any optimism from Flynn. Um, so, and has he ever given money to Trump or the RNC? He's told people not to give money to the RNC, repeatedly slandered the RNC, and instead he directs people to give money to him and his various organizations. So let's look at what Flynn said I think this was just yesterday. So if this is small, I apologize, but I'll go ahead and read it. He says, breaking. Yeah, this was just yesterday. He posted it. Breaking. Last 24 hours, Ukraine fired ATACMS into Russian territory. That's missiles into Russian territory. A clear escalation of war. So what? Number one, Harris should immediately invoke the 25th Amendment and remove Biden. He's sleepwalking us into World War III. So, it clearly wasn't Biden that was doing this because he was on vacation in the Amazon when this happened. So he was on vacation and I don't think that anybody really thinks that Biden's responsible for anything that happens in the White House. Ultimately, of course he is, but yeah. So he's saying, his first point here is let's at least put constitutional pressure on Harris because Joe's poor memory makes him unaccountable. Okay, so yeah, so he wants to replace Biden with Harris with 60 days left. 60 days today left. So we're 2 months out from inauguration day, and he wants to replace Biden with Harris. Number two, the current House of Representatives must impeach Biden for endangering the United States. Hell, Trump was impeached for losing the 2020 election. And so first he wants to invoke the 25th Amendment, which is says that president can be removed if they are incapacitated, or if their health is so bad that they're not able to do the job. And so he wants Harris to be the president, and I'm not sure what he doesn't say why. Just that because Biden's memory is so bad that it'll be better if Harris is president. This really proves what it would only be worse. How does it serve Trump? I've asked some of Flynn's followers that have come after me on X, how does this help Trump for Harris to become the president in the last 2 months? There's no answer. It's crickets. We the People says stupid. Now Trump is the POTUS elect. Why on earth would he want her to take the reins? Exactly. There is absolutely no good, only harm. Like she is obviously a communist. She's obviously close with Obama. There is zero good that would come from this. Number three, incoming U.S. officials must make contact with Putin to de-escalate the situation. And this is interesting. And then he says, see my conversation with former Russian ambassador Kislyak. Different circumstances, but same outcome. De-escalation. So he's saying that the reason why, because this is one of the things that I've kind of criticized Flynn about, is that what he was doing. It's very similar. Just a couple weeks within a couple weeks of Trump's election, and I think it was still in November of 2016, Obama placed really harsh sanctions on Russia, and it was clearly a provocation. It was very obvious that was a provocation. And so when Flynn got a text message on apparently it was on his government issued iPhone. And I had said BlackBerry before, and somebody that was following the trial and actually in the trial corrected me, said it was actually an iPhone. That he may have had a BlackBerry also, but it was on his iPhone that was issued by the government. So the point is that he knew that whatever was on that was going to be monitored. He ended up making the call though from his hotel room, which is interesting. It was still monitored. But he should have known that any communication, especially with the Russians, would be monitored, and he would have known that. I think he was expecting that. But what he did is he was engaging in diplomacy in contradiction to the sitting commander in chief, and that was seen as an affront. Whether it was illegal or not. It was I think there's an argument that it was a violation of, I think it's the Logan Act. And again, you're welcome to correct me if I think it's the Logan Act. Um, and so, but that was a big part, and that's something that clearly he should have spoken with Trump about before doing, or at least afterwards. He should have spoken to Trump, but he didn't speak to Trump. Um, he apparently spoke to Mike Ledeen, but that's a whole nother story. So, um, and but the circumstances, there's a lot of similarity. Like, why would Biden, or the Democrats here, obviously, I think that it's widely speculated that Obama has some influence, probably a great deal of influence within the Biden administration, and um, and possibly over Flynn. If he wants Harris to become the president here, I mean, it's wild. So similar thing. There's provocation against Russia, trying to incite war, just trying to make things, just trying to create a dangerous and turbulent, chaotic situation, which is often what they're just trying to do, because out of chaos comes trouble, and this that's ultimately disorder, and that's ultimately the goal, is destruction, so that they can rebuild something in the image that they want. So um yeah, so that so but it's funny how he's saying he's kind of painting himself as an agent of peace. He was, he was the cooler head in that situation in 2016. And so he's saying somebody needs to do what I did. But what he did, what he did was entrap Trump and derailed his presidency from the start. And I think that that's what this is really. This is bait. This is bait. They're trying to get Trump or somebody in his orbit to do what Flynn did in 2016, so that they can come in and create a controversy over it, or claim that it's illegal, and make that the seat of a new impeachment, or who knows what. And it's very clear that Flynn is trying to bait this too. I mean, this is very clear. He's trying to get that same, he's trying to do a repeat of this. So, and then he calls it on Matt Gaetz. So Matt Gaetz, he's not right now, he doesn't have any position at all. He hasn't even been officially nominated, but he's been chosen. It's been announced that he is Trump's pick for Attorney General. But Attorney General doesn't have anything to do with Russia. It's just domestic. So, if anything, it would be the Department of State, which I think he's chosen Marco Rubio for that. Um, so, I don't know, like, he's calling in Matt Gaetz. So he says, Trump administration, especially incoming AG Matt Gaetz, need to make it clear that the identities of the deep state operatives pulling the strings of the presidency, urging Biden to act recklessly. So he's saying, there's deep state operatives that are that are behind this. So okay, so if there's deep state operatives behind this with Biden, wouldn't they also be behind Kamala? Like, it's just, his logic just doesn't make any sense. You can tell when Flynn actually writes something himself. He likes to plagiarize, but when he actually writes something himself, it doesn't make any sense at all. All right, number 5, pray that we make it to 20th of January. The voters spoke. Trump's mandate to end the killing and seek peace needs to be America's path. And then he says, I'll provide more details today. And then he tags Trump's team. It's like he's the great advisor, right? And then he responds to that, saying that he wants to see cooler heads prevail. But everything that he's talking about here, there's nothing cool about it, or rational or thoughtful about what he's doing. Oh, we the people says, how does it serve the people of the world? No, there's nothing about this that serves the people of the world. And so some people said, when I posted this on X and I said he's trying to incite World War III, I think he is trying to incite World War III. He's trying to get something stupid to happen, because Kamala Harris would probably try to start World War III. Who knows what she would do? And she would do whatever she's told, and she would take radical action. What does she have to lose if she were president with just weeks remaining? What would she have to lose to do anything and everything? Like, why would she even leave? Who knows? I think that the main reason why she would leave is because if she didn't, it would just put the nails in the coffin for Democrats' chances in 2026. And that's important to them. They do not want to lose, especially key states like Michigan, and Arizona, where the executive branches of a lot of key states are up for grabs in 2026. Governorship, Secretary of State, Attorney General, We've seen how important these roles are. And in the states where these Democrats, who are really Marxist oriented Democrats, have control, um, they've really used that to their ultimate benefit, and they don't want to lose that. So I fully expect that there's going to be a peaceful transfer of power. It would be absolutely self-destructive on the part of the Democrats to try to stay in power. I don't see that happening. Um, so yeah, I think we're in a strange time, and there's everybody wants to know who's good and who's bad, but in this world there are some bad actors. There are some truly evil actors. I think that, and I said on the MG show on Friday, what the Flynn orgs, what Citizens Defending Freedom and the Remnant Alliance is doing to infiltrate churches, to embed, by their own words, they're saying they want to embed human intelligence resources into churches to monitor the local community. That means spying on the local community. They want uh, to provide professional media resources to churches to put narratives out into the local community. This is information warfare on the local level, and against people like me, against local journalists who are speaking out against what they're doing, against the people within the Republican Party who identify what Flynn is promoting as an insurgency, and are trying to bring sanity and reason to the Republican Party instead of this Christian nationalism that they're promoting. And what they do is they're promoting this black and white idea. It's grassroots versus establishment, or they call themselves conservatives, or they call themselves constitutionalists. Whatever it is that they call themselves, it doesn't matter. That what they're creating is this us versus them paradigm, and we are really baited into that as well. We want to know, who do we trust? And the consistent answer that I give is the only person that you can really trust is in the world is yourself. You can really only trust your own discernment. And I think, we all, every single one of us, if we want to save this country, we don't just join a movement and become a follower. We actually have to become a statesman. And so to become a statesman, one of the key things is we need to be able to consider and to challenge our own assumptions. We need to be able to consider where we might be wrong. We need to examine and really be aggressive in examining evidence that might contradict our assumptions and our worldview. If we can't do that, if we're psychologically incapable of doing that, we might be brainwashed, and that's really important. If we want to save this country, it's up to each one of us to become a statesman who um who refuses to be controlled. And the only way to do that is to challenge our assumptions. We have to be very careful about what we accept as being factual. We have to be very careful about our assumptions that we're making about what is true and what's not. And we have to look at that continuously. And it's hard. I mean, it can be painful and challenging. And I mean, it's very easy to you know, God's first commandment is, you shall have no other gods before me. And this is a commandment against idolatry, idol worship. And we think about that as worshiping some statue, a golden statue of a calf or something, and like I don't care about a golden statue. No, that's not what he means by idol worship. He's talking about things that we make in our hearts more important than God. And it is exceptionally easy to do because we are created as beings of worship. And so whether you're a Christian or not, all of us, we worship. That's what we do. You know, whether it's, playing video games or, some other vice of some sort, or, just even, we can worship our children and our families. And, God calls us to worship him. And it's a challenge. It's impossible apart from Christ. It's not something that we can do on our own. So, and that's one of the things that really distinguishes Christianity from any other religion. Joe says, we need to send someone that can see eye to eye with Putin to end this. How about the Secretary of Retribution? Oh, Joe, I love you. Let's 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 send Ivan Raiklin to Russia. Oh, that'd be fantastic. He'd be such a good diplomat, wouldn't he? We needed that. And Pusher says anything of this world that you put before God can be considered idol worship. Absolutely. And the thing about idol worship is that when you poke an idol, you know it's an idol because you get angry. and 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 so if there's something that you're being told and you get angry, then that's worth, that's something that for each one of us is worth examining. And so, we all got to do that. And it's a challenge. And I think, but if we can do that, there's there's cults on the left, there's cults on the right, and that's what it is a cult because it is there's idolatry is a really key aspect of it. And they know this. This is a part of military intelligence technology. They've been doing this, it comes out of MK Ultra, and they have studied how to manipulate and people and create mass formation psychosis. And we saw that they did a huge experiment with that with COVID. And they did create in such a large number of the population, the global population, mass formation psychosis. But what they also found is that when you do that on such a scale, you also create a very strong rebellion against that, because there's a big portion of the population that don't want that, that don't want to be manipulated, and that don't want to be told that they can't do stuff. They don't want to surrender their freedoms and their liberties. And so that's where, we become statesmen. We have to really be clear about, um, supporting what is right. And it's so hard. It's so hard to know what is right. And even with Kash Patel, yeah, he's got dual citizenship. He does, and he speaks Russian. His parents are Russian. He would be perfect. He would Ivan Raiklin would be the perfect ambassador to Russia. I'm joking. Don't take some clip there and say, look at what Scott McMahon says. Oh, that's hilarious. But even with Kash Patel, he is I don't know what he would do. Um, I think that he would, based on his book, based on the disinformation, and based on, the disinformation that Dan Bongino has put out. Um, I wonder who Dan Bongino's sources are. And, I see, I'm just this, I'm small. I'm not a big deal. I'm really not. I'm I'm just a worm, but I am following, the evidence, and I'm doing so with whatever measure of courage God gives me to do that with. And I make mistakes, but I still have people coming and trying to influence me in all kinds of different directions. Um, and so, you got somebody like Dan Bongino who really he came out of nowhere. I mean, he'd been what experience did he have in the media? And all of a sudden everybody's following him. He came out, people say I came out of nowhere. I mean, I still have less than 10,000 followers. I've been doing this for 10 or 11 months. So, yeah, I did come out of nowhere, but I'm not, I don't have hundreds of thousands of followers. I'm not at that, I think it'd be great. It'd be cool. I'm willing to do that. It's kind of scary, but I'm totally willing to do it. Um, and I appreciate every single one of you and all of your questions and your support. So RZA says they have to push fear, keep you in fear so that you need them and pay them for information. And that's a big part of it. Yeah, they create they one of the things that I saw even in my first story as I was studying the shadow operator behind Christina Caramo is one of the very first things that he does is he says there's enemies all around us. And so they create this paranoia, the sense of paranoia, because and that's a big part of a cult is you never trust anyone outside of the cult. And they create that very deliberately and very forcefully. And fear is absolutely critical. And so it's important for us because if we want to be statesmen, to not fear, regardless, no matter what's happening. So say World War III is coming, okay, you know, I think that we need to remain rational, and in all things, Um, if you're a Christian, you can find hope and trust in Christ and comfort in Christ in all things. Um, and if you're not a Christian, I would encourage you to seek Christ because he is real and he lives and he is unbelievably powerful and amazing and he can change your heart in ways that you cannot even that I could not comprehend beforehand. I completely doubted, and I believed that all Christians were sheeple and I thought I was too smart to be a Christian. Um, but yeah, I mean, in Christ, I just yeah, if you if you can humble yourself and repent of your sins and pursue the Christ of the Bible, not of anyone's imagination, but the one who truly lives, who is described completely accurately in the Bible. If you have any questions about that, you're welcome to DM me. But even if you're not a Christian, and even if you have no interest in being a Christian, we still as an American, you're you're born in you have a birthright of our Constitution, of our Bill of Rights, and of our freedoms. And in order to protect those, we must become good and independent thinkers. And so it's really critical. And the First Amendment guarantees 100% our freedom of thought, our freedom of religion, and our freedom to speak and to share our thought, to share our religion, to share whatever. And and obviously we do so most effectively when we do it lovingly and with courage and understanding and and character. And so that's we're all called to that, and it's very difficult, and nobody's perfect, and we're all in some area of gray. And so I would encourage you not to see people as like black and white, not to try to see everyone through this. They're either good or they're bad. An example like with Cash Patel and with Tom Homan, if Trump picks Cash Patel, I hope he doesn't. I truly do hope he does not pick Cash Patel. I think actually a better pick would be Bernie Carrick. Bernie Carrick was an NYPD beat cop, and he became the commissioner, the NYPD commissioner, and he's been friends with Trump for a very long time. Um, and so I think Bernie Carrick would be a fantastic choice for the FBI. I've actually thought that for a long time, and I don't see his name being mentioned. I don't think the Mike Rogers, we're kind of given it's either going to be Mike Rogers or it's going to be Cash Patel. I hope that there's another name that's in consideration there, but um, Clay Higgins, that's another great choice. He was a sheriff. I like Clay Higgins. I think that would be a really another great choice also. And um, so yeah, I mean, there are plenty of other choices, and it's not like what Dan Bongino is going off and saying he's the only one. That's just hogwash. There's a lot of good people in this country, and with the experience and the ability to bring the reform and the desire to bring the reform that's needed. Um, and so yeah, we will see what Trump chooses. But he did choose Tom Homan. Tom Homan was at the Rod of Iron Ministries thing in Pennsylvania with Ivan Raiklin and Flynn and Cash Patel and all these people. And it was an absolutely nutso event. And Tom Homan was the director for a time of the America Project. And so I like Tom Homan. I've liked him since I think everything that he's ever said about the border, I've agreed with, at least that I've heard him say. But there's some compromise there, and the one thing that I see is that he did leave the America Project, but then he still shows up at this Rod of Iron thing. Was he? And this goes back to this first question about Eric Trump and Don Jr. I think it was from Krista. Um, and said, why is Trump so close to Flynn and Clay Clark? Maybe I would guarantee you, this is a pretty easy statement to make that Eric Trump and Don Jr. And even Alina Habba, they are much more loyal when push comes to shove. It's President Trump over Flynn. There's no question. There is no question whatsoever. whatever it is that their father tells them to do, they'll do, um, and I think that I'm sure that's the case with Tom Homan. And then also looking at Tom Homan's position, he's the border czar, which is important, especially given the mandate that Trump is going to give him. But it's also not, you know, it's not the FBI director, and which is responsible for even investigating, which I believe Flynn himself and the whole network really needs to be investigated. And I don't think that Kash Patel would do that. And that is a problem. And Sparky says, and this is good, as long as he does his job, and it's exactly right. I think Tom Homan would do his job. So his job is the border, and it doesn't really matter that much, as long as he's doing that job and he's doing what Trump wants him to do, which I think he would. And I think that he would do a good job of leading. I think that ICE agents would definitely respect him because he's had that experience, and he wants them to do their job and to do it well. And I think that there's been, from what I've heard from people who are within the government, um, there is a lot of um, positive anticipation and optimism within Washington D.C. about Trump becoming president. That there has been a lot that people have just secretly said this is really wrong, but they haven't had the ability to do anything about it or even to speak out against it. And so, yeah, I think that there's a lot of anticipation, a lot of positive anticipation, especially in Washington, D.C. about Trump coming. And I think he's going to be able to get a lot done. I think this is just a really, really good time. And I just, all of the fear, all of the panic, all of the anger, all of the, he's got to pick Cash, he's got to pick somebody else. Can we just set that down and just like enjoy the moment? We just want a great election. So many of us work so hard to get to accomplish that. It takes a lot of work, and let's enjoy it, and let's watch what happens, and let's not get all angry about whatever we're told to get angry about. That's all psyops. We don't need to. We can be thoughtful, we can be emotionally, uninvolved, and we can speak the truth. And, so that's what I think, and I appreciate, all of you that are here. I think that that's the reason why you're here, because that's what you're doing, and that's what you want to do more of. And so, just I'm overjoyed for the opportunity to do that with you. And I'm just gonna end with my, appeal to visit my Substack. It is biggertruthmedia.com. And at a minimum, make sure that you enter your email address so that you get notifications when I do put out reports and episodes. That's why you don't miss anything I do. And I would ask you to consider paying $5 a month to support me, because I'm not funded by the deep state. I'm just, trying to figure out how to pay the bills, doing what God has put before me right now. So I appreciate your support, your help, your friendship, and even your challenging questions. So anyone, if you think that I'm wrong, you're welcome to question me. And if you want more information, whatever, I'm pretty available on X, and I also make myself available for sure to my subscribers. So there will be more and more paid content too for my paid subscribers on the Substack. So with that, I just have a joyful afternoon, evening, morning, whatever it is for you. Let's think about, what we could be grateful for right now. And there is so much. And let's follow Trump's advice. Let's dare to be optimistic about the future. And because that is just sound advice. And I think that that's how we can all work and help to make America great again. So let's do it. Go team, go America. Let's unite around our Bill of Rights and around what is good and true and just. And we'll go from there. Thanks a lot.